I got drafted by the Milwaukee Draft Board. I had to report to the recruiting center in downtown Milwaukee on a specific day. They gave me a physical, and after I passed the physical, they loaded me on a bus with a bunch of other draftees, and we were off to Fort Knox, Kentucky, near Louisville. I could have avoided the draft real easy by maintaining my student deferment, but I was kind of tired of school. I was wanting a break, and I felt at that time that everybody owed every male owed their country at least 2 years of military service. So at the end of basic training, I had orders to go to the MP school, to become an MP.
Military police.
Military police, right. But I did not pass my PT test. So I couldn't do that. I had to spend an extra 2 weeks learning how to throw a briquet, a hand grenade. For some reason or other, I did real good on all of the PT tests, but I could not throw a hand grenade. I had never played much baseball, and I just couldn't throw. But I did learn how to throw a hand grenade. Of course, my orders to go to MP school had already been avoided, and I had new orders to go home for leave. I think my orders arrived at home while I was home to report to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, the Brooks Army Medical Center. It was the medical field service. About halfway through the school, the commandant from the medical field service school called me to his office, sat me down, and told me that I was put in his pharmacy school by mistake. Only Army recruits and volunteers who had a minimum of 4 years of service were allowed to take this course. And I either would be transferred to another course or I would have to volunteer for an additional 2 years of service to give full. And then he kind of whispered to the side, "You're over halfway through this course. I seriously doubt if they'll carry through on that threat." I didn't want to go to Vietnam. I would have preferred to stay in the States. And my orders came down. I was to go to Fort MacArthur, California. Long Beach, it was in Long Beach, California, on the ocean, a perfect assignment. And theoretically, I was supposed to be there till I got out of the service. I was assigned as a pharmacy to their hospital. Okay, I got to Fort MacArthur. I got assigned, and when I got in there, they looked at me. They looked at my record, and they looked at my college material, and they said, "We got too many pharmacists here. We don't need you in the pharmacy. But we don't have any lab technicians. We really need you in the laboratory." Well, they saw I worked in the medical research lab at a VA hospital before coming into the Army. So they put me in the lab, and that I was very happy about that because I knew it better than I did pharmacy. I got there, they knew exactly who I am, who I was, and why I was there, but they had some other information. I was to go home on 2 weeks leave immediately so I could make it to my uncle's funeral. And when leave was over, I was to report to Fort Lewis, Washington. Well, when I got back to the hospital, everybody working in that hospital, it seems like, except me, knew that anybody in the medical field who had a report to Fort Lewis would end up in Vietnam. I took my 2 weeks leave, went back to Fort Lewis, Washington. They told me to pack I was assigned to the 523rd Field Hospital and to pack a pharmacy and make sure I had everything I needed to for a pharmacy under combat conditions. So I went to the pharmacy at the Army Hospital at Fort St. Louis and asked to talk to a pharmacy, and that pharmacy was very good. He gave me a list of what he thought I should make sure I had, and so I made sure we had those things. They didn't have enough Navy personnel to man the ship, so they released some prisoners out of a federal prison somewhere that were able to sail that ship. And we had, I believe there were only 2 Navy personnel on the ship. That was a kind of unique situation. But we sailed out of San Francisco Bay. There was a military band playing lots of patriotic music for us as we were leaving. All of a sudden, we were being followed by a bunch of Russian fishing boats. And they didn't want the Russians to know what was on that ship. So from then on, the deck was off limits. We could not go on deck. Okay, we got on shore and we were loaded onto trucks. We were to convoy about 50 miles to Nha Trang from Cameron Bay. Oh, we had but they held up the convoy because we didn't have our ammunition. We had to have ammunition. We had to leave by 3 o'clock in the afternoon so we could get to Nha Trang before dark, because the road was not safe after dark. It was supposed to be safe during daylight hours. Well, we sat there for hours waiting for our ammunition right up until 3 o'clock. They never found their ammunition. They said, well, we have to take off now. We can't wait a minute longer. If any truck got stuck or stalled, the convoy would not wait for them. They had to go on because they had to get to Nha Trang before dark. We happened to be the last truck in the convoy. And about halfway to Nha Trang, as we were going through a rice field, our truck stalled and stopped, and the convoy kept going. All of a sudden, a whole bunch of Vietnamese people in black uniforms, well, they weren't uniforms, they were black clothes. We didn't realize at that time, but all the Vietnamese wore those black clothes. But up till then, those were the only Vietnamese we seen on TV or in pictures were Viet Cong in black clothes. They started running toward us out of the woods. We didn't know who they are or what they are, but we had no ammunition. We stood up and pointed our rifles at them, hoping they wouldn't come any closer. And they come pretty close, but they didn't come up to the truck. The assistant driver drove out and fiddled under the hood. He finally got the truck going, and he jumped back in, and we took off, and we raced to catch up with the convoy, and we made it to Nha Trang safely. Every pharmacy I noticed when I got there, they were stocked with all kinds of stuff, ingredients for manufacturing drugs, just because it was Army protocol to put that in every pharmacy. But they were no modern pharmacy at the time would use them, because they got what they needed already manufactured by pharmaceutical companies. But some of the things we always were short of was suntan lotion, diarrhea medicine, cough syrup, and several kinds of ointments. But because we had all these ingredients, and I was able to make all these things myself from scratch. One volunteer duty that I did a lot and enjoyed doing, not a whole lot, but occasionally, we would have professional entertainers come in through the USO to entertain the troops. The medical corpsmen and the pharmacists, we would dress up in our medical whites, and we would help patients, wheelchair them, some even on stretchers, and take them to these events. And they would always reserve seats for us, or an area for our patients at front and center for the hospital patients. And then after the events were over and most of the troops left, these celebrities would visit with the patients and us. And so I got to meet quite a few people, including Barbara Streisand and Bobby Rydell. Two of my favorite things to do when I was in the train. It was a safe area, so we could leave the base and go anywhere we wanted, as long as we were in civilian clothes. And we would rent bicycles and travel in the countryside. And we would also, two things we really liked to do, and we always did this with our hospital chaplain, because he liked to do it too, is go visit the orphanage in the train. We spent Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter at the orphanage. And we made a lot of other visits. We would get gifts for the children from friends at home, friends and relatives at home, and from church groups at home. And we would always take those to the orphanages, hand them out to the children, and they loved it. I got an amazing number of promotions while I was in Vietnam, that I probably didn't deserve. Because I had a college degree, at any point in my career I could have accepted a commission as an officer, but I would have to serve 4 years from the day that I accepted a commission. And they were bound and determined to get me to accept that commission. That's all they wanted. I kept turning them down, and I was very polite and nice about it. I was patriotic. I had nothing against the Army. I was anxious to go home and become a civilian. Of course, I had big dreams of what I was going to accomplish in my lifetime with my college education, which I had worked hard on. But anyways, that's how that turned out. A few days later, I got the promotion, and as specialist 5th class. And I'm not sure if that was a good thing or a bad thing, because I only had 3 months left in the service from that point on, from the date I got it. It increased my pay, for those last 3 months. We arrived in Los Angeles about 5 o'clock in the morning. By 9 o'clock in the morning, I was all checked out of the Army, except for the last step. The last step on checking out of the Army is to go and get paid. They paid you in cash. And so I went, and they handed me my cash and the amount and everything. Well, what they did not do, they did not give me that pay raise for my last 3 months in the Army. They didn't even have it on my records that I got that promotion, but I had proof of it. I finally got out of there at 10 o'clock that night after filling out a stack of paperwork, and they were going to send it to St. Louis, and St. Louis was going to send me the rest of the money they owed me. And that's how, so I was the last person of all my friends to get out of there. I really am disappointed in the way the war turned out and the way the political situation turned out in that country. But I was there in 1965 and 66, and the war did not end until 10 years later in 1976. That's when we pulled out of Vietnam, but the situation for the people of Vietnam got a whole lot worse after we pulled out. Some people think it was a useless war. We did spend a lot of time and money and lives on it, but I don't believe it was a waste.